Okay. Lesson 1.7 has to deal with absolute values. And absolute value functions come in this form. Now in class we did a discovery activity on this and really looked at the way absolute value functions move. Absolute value functions come in this form where there's a number, sometimes on the outside a coefficient, absolute value of x plus or minus something, minus h, and then plus k at the end. Now I want you to kind of watch along with what happens in my calculator as I change those things. And then we'll start to jot them down. Okay, so absolute value, to graph it, you hit the math button, arrow over to number, and that gives me my absolute value function. In this top one, I'm just going to put the parent function. The parent function has a vertex at 0, 0. The slope of this arm is a 1. Slope of this arm is negative 1. Looks like a V. Let's see what happens when I change the numbers on there. So underneath that, I'm going to make a new one. I am going to start with adding and subtracting things from the end. It's absolute value of x, but what if I add 3 to it? What do you think is going to happen? Think back on the way those lines translated. Look, it moved it up 3. If I subtract 4 from the end of that, here's the original, up, moved it down 4. Exactly what we suspected. Now, what if I change that, and instead of subtracting 4, I subtract 4 inside? Let's see what happens. Here's the original. If I subtract 4 on the inside, it moves it to the right. So subtracting numbers move it to the right. If I add something here, then it might move it to the left, right? There's the original. Sorry for the bell. And there it does move it to the left. So when you add numbers inside that function, moves it to the left. When you subtract them, it moves it to the right. What about numbers on the outside? So let's make that 2. Absolute value of x. Let me erase this other stuff. What happens if I make that the number 2? Here's the original. What's 2 going to do to it? Ooh, it gives it a slope of 2. So if I change that to a 3, think it'll give a slope of 3? Here's the original. Yep, slope of 3. Now, let's see what happens if I change that to, I'm going to insert 1 divided by, so we've got 1/3 in front. There's the original. Ooh, it makes it wider. Made it a slope of 1/3. So using these rules, we can graph absolute value functions very quickly. So here, when you add inside, you move left, subtract inside the function, and it moves right. Add at the end, add outside. If we remember, that moves it up. Subtract outside, and it moved it down. And then the number out front, this number here, kind of controls your slope. The larger it is, the steeper it is, more of a fraction it is, the wider it is. Now, we didn't look at something. What happens if that's negative? What do you think is going to happen? Hopefully you guessed it. Negative flips it upside down. How wonderful. That is great. And that is really the key to graphing absolute value functions.